Good. Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to the April Lancaster Real Estate Investment Meeting. Thanks for coming out. Still trying to figure out why all these people would come out on a nice evening like tonight when there's yard to mow and there's garden to be planted and there's all kinds of other stuff to be done. But anyway, thanks for coming out. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jake Byler. I've been a part of this group for a number of years and have really enjoyed being a part of this group as well as going to many other groups over the years, and that's kind of what inspires me to do this and try to provide value for the community as well as get a ton of value from it myself. How many of you are here for the first time? Good handful. Yeah, it's not every month we get a speaker coming from 1,000 miles away, so you picked a good one to come to. Couple of things, if you are not familiar with the facilities here, most of you probably are. The main restrooms for the place are all the way up the hallway around the corner there. There are some other restrooms right down this hallway. There's some water on the table in the back. And if you are not on our email list and you would like to be added, there's a paper on the table in the back with a QR code to scan, and also my email if you want to. If you scan the QR code, you can drop your email there. If that doesn't work for you, just shoot me an email and I'll get you added to the list if you want. Kind of realized tonight, or today as I'm getting ready for this, I've kind of realized that every time I prepare for one of these meetings, I get kind of this mixture of emotions. And part of it is I get really excited about it because it's a lot of fun and I think it's going to be a good time. And part of it is I get nervous. Most of you guys probably have no idea. I know how it is. You go to events and you see, people up front, and you're like, oh, it's easy for them, whatever. And it's gotten easier for me. It's gotten easier as I've done it for a while, but it's a stretch every single time. And it is for many of our speakers too. It's like you just do it anyway. You get better by doing things, and so yeah, just every time I'm like, it's not uncommon for me to spend an hour or two on a day like today, trying to put notes together to think what I'm going to share for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I might actually forget to share most of that if I don't have it right in front of me, and I'll say something I wasn't going to say. I'll say stuff, whatever. You get the point. But part of the I think when it gets down to it, part of the excitement of getting into something like this. It'd be interesting if I would go around and ask a bunch of you guys why you're here. Like, what are you expecting from tonight? Why are you here? There's plenty of other things you could be doing tonight. And there could be a lot of correct answers. There could be a lot of good answers to that. But to me, it kind of boils down to the magic of we can all walk out of here with more than what we came in with. We can all walk out of here with something of value that we did not have when we came in. And that is simply the magic of collaborating like this. It doesn't work that way with everything. Like if Marlin and I are hanging out, and if I give Marlin $1 and he gives me $1, we still each just have $1. But if I give Marlin an idea and he gives me an idea, we now each have 2 ideas. It's pretty cool. And I think really the reason that we are drawn to stuff like this is because we're created to live in the context of community, learning from each other, sharing, growing together. It really is about growth and development to some degree. I would venture to guess that for every single one of you guys, if you had everything in life that you wanted, everything was perfectly fine, there was nothing you were lacking, you probably wouldn't be here. Like, you come hoping for something, hoping to gain something, and hopefully that'll happen. Really, a lot of it is about relationships. That's why Marlin is here tonight. That's why I got connected with the group originally. That's why every single one of you guys are here, out of relationship with somebody else, or because of somebody that you know. It's probably true for every single person in the room here. Anyway, enough of that. We're going to run out of time tonight, I can tell. So. Quick note for our meeting sponsors for this year. Most of you guys know This meeting is primarily paid for by our sponsors. Our 2023 sponsors are Joe Liowski. Joe is actually the founder of this group. He has Compass Property Management. Jeff Moeller, he's a private lender in the group. Dave Wolf, PNG Mortgage, he has spoken here multiple times. I think he was here just a month or two ago. Nate Rittenhouse, I think I saw Nate here tonight with Lancaster Federal Credit Union. And Ben Yoash, local realtor, him and his team are pretty engaged here. Ben is going to show us, give us a little bit of a market update in just a bit. But before he does that, Jeff had something that he wanted to share real briefly. Just, can you come on up, Jeff? Just kind of a note on long-term buy and hold.
Yeah, I just wanted to remind everybody that principal pay down on your mortgage is a legitimate way to make money. In the last 5-6 years, everybody's focused on the top of the line, real estate increasing 10-20% a year. But I really believe that long-term money in real estate is made through cash flow and principal pay down. And the reason I wanted to share that with you is it's a happy time in my life because next month I make the final payments on 2 of my properties. And you know that now granted I haven't been as aggressive about raising rent. Eli King, you make me feel guilty whenever you talk about that, but in any event, as of next month I have $800 a month in my pocket that I didn't have before. If I had the rents where they should be, it's probably $1,200 or $1,300 a month. But in any event, that's something I didn't have before. It's nice to have that every month. You start out with that in your checking account, and it's there to spend or do whatever you want with. So,
Did you buy this 20 years ago?
I bought the one in 2000, 921 Lafayette Street in Lancaster for about $35,000. The other one is 2676 Northfield Drive. It's a townhouse in East Petersburg. I spent $55,000 for it. I thought I paid a lot at the time. And now, you know, the townhouse is probably worth $170, and the other Lafayette is probably $120 or $130. It's kind of rental grade. But I sure didn't put much of my own money into it. You know, I refinanced them in 2008, get some money to start a business. And then now 15 years, it's a long time, but it's now come and gone, and fine.
Great, I love it. Thank you for sharing. And then some of you guys are thinking, well, if it's paid off, you would refinance, right? You could pull the cash out. Maybe you would, but the point is he's got options. Yeah. He's got options they didn't have before. You could do either one. So Benio, you can come on up. Benio, like I said, Benio's one of our sponsors. He's going to talk a little bit as a sponsor, talking about what they do, and also give us a market update, a local market update here. He's got some fun slides prepared. So. You go backwards. There you go. Okay, so there's a pointer thingy on there too. Your turn, and the other. See, we really don't know what we're doing.
We figure it out as we go. Jeff, I see you being conservative as always. I know those addresses. If you want to sell them, we can get you a good bit more than what you're asking. Anyway, Jake gave me the opportunity to share the market update this month, and I wanted to zoom out a bit further than Chris has the last couple of months. So we're looking at, probably worth clarifying here, this is data for Lancaster County residential sales. I think it's worth noting on that the rest, like other asset classes such as farmland, large multifamily, that kind of thing in the county, tends to track these numbers pretty closely. So you'll see some variation, but this is useful regardless of the asset class you're interested in. It also tracks fairly closely with the country, the nation as a whole. So we'll get into that. This is not going to be a surprise to guys like Jeff and Joe and a whole bunch of you that have been in the business for a long time. But this is what's happened to median sold price in the last 10 years. So we've gone from a little over 165,000 to, we've actually crept over 300,000 just recently. So pretty cool if you own property. If you don't, it kind of sucks for some people. End of month inventory. This is another interesting one. So this is just inventory as a whole. Forget the end of month piece. But I think I've exaggerated this to some of you in the room. I have to confess that. I'm pretty sure I've told some of you that this number has been over 2,000 available units in Lancaster County, which I think I was probably looking at everything commercial, multifamily altogether. So forgive me for that if I told you that. But either way, you get the picture. You know, a normal market 5 years ago, we would have seen almost 1,000 units on the market. We've dipped under 200 a couple times, but this is just looking at a pinpoint during the average during the year. So as you see, we're still way lower than we once were. And the other interesting piece with this is you'll see somewhere around 5,000 to 6,000 residential transactions in Lancaster in a year, and they say about 6 months of inventory is a normal inventory. So that number really should be 2,500 to 3,000 units. But here we are, down around 450. Days on market, this is the most crazy one to me. So we were at 70 days on market in 2014. Today we're at around 15, and that's been 15 to 20 for the last couple of years has been the average. So I'm kind of running through these quickly. We'll get into this in more detail as we go, but this is some of the stuff that I watched that's really interesting to me, and is some indicator of what the larger market looks like as well. So this is what's happening to affordability with interest rates having done what they have. This is what the average Lancaster County mortgage would look like roughly. $260,000, 30-year mortgage, 6.5% rate. So today, that costs you the $1,643. A year ago, this would have been your number. So the principal and interest payment is about 2/3 higher than you would have been this time a year ago for the exact same house. And that's assuming prices have stayed level. So this is something that I don't think a lot of us in the room think about too much, but this is what's happening to your average consumer. Their borrowing power just went down by, so 2/3 isn't quite accurate. It's principal and interest, and some other factors play into that too. But in a sense, their borrowing power went down. They're at about half of what they would have been. It's pretty crazy. And this is really, you might want to take a picture of this, those of you that can access the site. We're not going to get into this in a ton of detail, but this is sort of your bonus resource for the evening. This is a county by county guide on what appreciation has done in the whole nation in the last year. So a couple of things that are interesting here is Lancaster in the last year, despite interest rates having gone crazy, we still gained about 12%, 11 to 12% appreciation in the last year. Marlin's part of the world. Do you know what you've seen in Sarasota in the last year?
10% in 2022.
About 10% in 2022.
Versus
There's
27 the year before.
27 the year before, yeah. And there's still parts of Florida that have increased by over 30% in the last year. So, and then on the flip side, you see the West Coast largely flatlining, even declining in some areas. So there's a whole lot going on there. This is for those of you that ask, how's the real estate market? That's way too broad. Which market are you talking about? Which asset class in that market? There's way too much in that question. But, so what I'd like to unpack a bit here, I'd really like to pull a bunch of you guys up here that have way more experience than I do and ask you where the market's going. But we don't have time for all of that, so I'll just give you some of my thoughts on it. So, to me, a big part of the way I think this through is thinking through the forces that are countering each other when it comes to what's the market going to do. So I'll start with some of the things that are pushing it downward. The big one is obviously affordability, right? So beyond what we just walked through with principal and interest increasing by 2/3 in the last year, if you zoom out even further, it gets pretty crazy. So if you go back to 1985, which was pretty much the golden age for affordability of a home in the US, it would have taken, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but the average salary that year, average household income was about $25,000, the average cost of the home was $84,000. $84,000 for the average home. How cool would that be? So that's about 3.5 times the annual household income. Now in 2023, that number is about 6.5 times the average household income. So again, you know, if you think it's harder for you to buy a home than your parents, you would be right. And that's what the average American is facing. So, you know, with that, I would say that's a pretty good reason to not be average if you can possibly avoid that. So yeah, that's affordability is obviously a big headwind. That's, you know, both interest rate related and as it relates to average income versus average home price. And then on the flip side is your lack of inventory. So time will tell how that plays out. And nationwide, there's definitely areas that are going to get, you know, that are going to be impacted by this, and prices will drop. But overall, in places like Lancaster, where's that inventory going to come from becomes the question, because you still have people wanting to move to the area a lot more than you have moving out. The difficulty of development has just continued to get worse over time. So if I had to guess, I think the inventory aspect of it is going to outweigh the affordability for the foreseeable future. And there's all kinds of factors that we can't control that, you know, that may prove any of us wrong on that, which is why we don't try to make concrete predictions on this. But that's, yeah, we'll see how that plays out. So really, figured I'd just put that data out there. You guys do with that what you will. And we'll see where all that goes. So Jake, I don't know if you want me to get into anything else up here, but I think that's about what I have.
Tell them real quick what you do yet.
Oh, sure. I can do that. No, we can get into that. So I'm one of the sponsors here, as Jake shared. I run a real estate sales team. Most of you in the room probably know one or all three of us, Joe Fisher, Chris Good, and then there's, you know, a team that helps us out in the back end as well. So yeah, we really thrive in several areas. One is, you know, as you would picture the typical realtor probably is, helping people buy and sell homes. Where I would like to think we have probably about as big of an opportunity as any is all three of us own sizable investment portfolios of our own. So I'd like to think we're more qualified than most people in that sense in helping people grow their portfolios. And that's, for me, in the sales space, is probably what I'm most passionate about. If you've got a portfolio and you're looking to grow it, let's talk strategy on that. I'd be more than happy to connect with anyone here on that. Another thing that we get into frequently as a part of helping people grow their rental portfolios is vacation rentals. And with that, we'll travel further abroad than we would with most of the other stuff. So we have a pretty good base in the Poconos, on the Eastern Shore in Maryland, some of those areas that are vacation rental hotspots. So if you want to talk to me about any of that stuff, I'm happy to connect. So.
Very good. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Jake.
I love the slides there. It's just pretty fascinating. I always feel like I do such a poor job at introducing someone, so I'm going to hand that off to somebody else tonight, mostly. But I will say that our speaker for tonight, Marlin, and his wife Erin traveled all the way from Sarasota, Florida. You're going to hear a bunch about Marlin's story. It's going to be fun. It's going to be good. Last year, he works as an agent down there. Last year, he sold over $35 million worth of real estate. So you can imagine it takes, you know, quite an education for somebody to do something like that. And he is highly educated. He made it through 8 grades in a little Amish one-room schoolhouse in Ohio. So that must be the secret. I don't know. And he started working with Dave Zook quite a bit. And just in the last couple of years that Marlin has gotten to know even anybody from the community. So after Marlin committed to coming and speaking, I asked Dave if he would be up for coming and joining us and kind of doing an interview. So grateful to have Dave Zook here. I'm going to hand it over to Dave. Let's give a big hand for Dave.
Wow, what a crowd. Well, I will say that I've done business with both of these guys, and both of them I would highly recommend that you talk to them and buy real estate from them. So that was, you know, a real gold nugget that got dropped here, and there's probably going to be a few more tonight, and one of them was don't be average. Love that. That's why we're in this room, right? We don't want to be average. So, one of the things I've, probably the older I get, the more I appreciate and embrace relationships with A players. And, you know, when, you know, some people will try to, you know, save a little money and maybe go a little with a cheaper guy. You know what? I would rather spend a little bit more money and not cut any corners and play with A players. A players usually aren't cheap, but they make you money. So just quickly, a couple years ago, Marlin, I had to think back here a little bit how we first met, but I was just reminded when I was reflecting a little bit that I didn't buy my first property in Sarasota from you. You remember that?
I do.
And so somebody else sold me, somebody else sold me a piece of real estate, but they weren't an A player. I mean, they brought me a piece of real estate that you know, I mean, it was a good deal, but I got to know Marlin. Landon, I think Landon introduced us, right? Landon Slayback introduced me to Marlin, and we've since bought a little bit of real estate. Two more closing tomorrow, right?
Yep.
So, you know, one thing I've learned to appreciate about Marlin is he is the kind of guy that I like to do business with. He is helpful. He has a Rolodex that he's willing to share when I ask him a question, and you know, I need a contact. He'll go out of his way to make sure that, you know, sometimes, you know, it would be easy to even just hand it off and say, well, here, call this guy. And said, no, I'll call this guy. I'll call this guy for you, and I'll set it up. Do you want me? And like the question could be, do you want to call like whatever, 2 or 3 appraisers? Do you want me to take it? Yeah, take care of it. Like, yeah, like he offered, and of course, and I've learned to appreciate that a lot. A players normally deal with A players, right? So when I go to Marlin or Penuel and I want something done, and you know, I want to tap into their Rolodex for a connection, I'm just assuming that it's going to be an A player, because A players normally deal with A players. So that is, we then went on, of course you helped me a bunch, and we then went on and bought a couple lots, and now we're in the middle of, you know, of course, through his relationship with one of the premier builders in Sarasota, Jonas Yoder. Some of you might know him, but he's an A player, right? He's an A player, and you know, so much so that his brand is so strong that, you know, if his name is on a house, it will bring a premium. Sort of like, you know, when you got a good bishop around here or something like that. Like a piece of real estate brings a premium, right? So, yeah, so now we're actually, the slab is poured and we're getting ready to build on one of our lots. And so it's been a lot of fun. You know, A players, Dave Ash, moved to Sarasota. We bought a house together, and he moved his family down for the winter and fixed up some stuff, and beautiful. I mean, you know, he made some ugly stuff beautiful, and so I just love, I mean, life is too short to not play with A players, right? So Marlin, come on up, and we'll get this started. So who has read Marlin's chapter in this book? A couple of you. All right, we're going to talk about a few things in the book. So sit down, and in no particular order, give us a little background. So not many people have read your book, so why don't we start there? I read it on the way home the other night when you sent me the chapter, and I found it quite intriguing. I found out some stuff I didn't know. I mean, if I knew everything, I might have not done it.
You would not have given me the car you did.
So, tell us a little bit about your childhood, your background, how you got into real estate. How'd you get to Sarasota? How'd you get into selling real estate? How'd you get into the top 1% of all realtors in Sarasota?
Yeah, well, I feel like that's a lot. Is this on? Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, so, yeah, so very happy to be here. Very honored to be here. I see some familiar faces in the crowd. But before I answer the question, I would just like to say, 2 years ago, I'd never been to Lancaster in my life. And I sit here tonight next to Dave Zook. Because of you, I'm here. And so I would have never read the book if it wouldn't have been for Dave Zook. You know, when I first was introduced to Dave Zook, we were on my wife and I, my wife is sitting right here, we were on an anniversary trip, and so Landon with B&B Breeze sends me a text message like he had done to a couple different people, and he says, hey, here's this Dave guy interested in the Sarasota real estate market, and you know, I kind of, on trips like that, I try not to, you know, take time away from my wife. I try to, like, you know, have family time. So I said, I'll call you Monday. Is that okay? And he said, sure, yeah, that's fine. I call him Monday, and he starts a conversation by saying, we already have a house under contract. I'm thinking, who is this guy that in one day I'm too late and I miss a deal already? And so it was so funny. I mean, that was not the case, but that's how it all started. And you know, in very short order, I learned that Dave Zook works in a very elite class, and it really upped my game, because I realized Dave acts on trust. And once he trusts you, he starts introducing me to all of Lancaster. I mean, I know so many people that are also A players because of Dave, because he's introducing me to them. So I think that's such an honorable thing. I mean, there's something special about Lancaster, because you don't see that everywhere, where you have somebody who's a real A player and has a lot of connections. And my joke was, I told my wife, I said, we gotta go meet this Dave guy. I mean, this guy is buying houses like I buy shoes. You know, I mean, seriously, this guy is like decisive and moves, and once there was trust built, if I told him I liked the house, he bought it. If I said I don't like it, he didn't buy it. And he didn't ask any questions. And plus, he started introducing me to all these people that are also like, oh, I own 50 doors. I own, you know, I'm a multifamily developer. And so it was quite an eye-opener, and you know, it really was intriguing, to where I did some Facebook stalking, found Elevate, and went to Elevate, and that's how I got connected to, you know, a lot of other people in the area. So I mean, I'm honored to sit here next to you, and I'm so grateful for our relationship. You know, above any commission I've ever made, I value our relationship more. You know, I'm very honored to be here. So. Remind me what the question was.
I was going to say, when are we going to get All right, so background, where you came from, a little bit of your backstory. Most of the people didn't read your book, so kind of give us a little background on how you actually ended up in Sarasota, and how you got to be the 1%, top 1% realtor in all of Sarasota.
Sure. So
I'm guessing that, you know, with waterfront, you know, some of the prices and stuff, like, it's pretty easy to be in the top 1%. I mean, like, other places it'd be pretty hard, but like Sarasota is probably pretty easy, because all you got to do is sell like a waterfront home or two, and you're in the top 1%, right?
well, average sucks. So yes, you're not gonna be in the top 1% by being average. Yeah. So I was born and raised Amish in Ohio. I have 9 siblings, 6 sisters, 3 brothers, and we were farmers. Milked 3 cows every morning before I went to school. Worked hard. You know, never had a lot of money. Never had a business sense. Never had any investment teachings. There was none of that growing up. We were farmers. We had enough to get by, but we were not business savvy or taught about business. And from a very young age, I always had a very curious spirit. I was always curious how things work. I mean, when I see somebody like Dave Zook, I'm still curious. Like, how is Dave Zook Dave Zook? Like, how do you operate at the level that you do? I'm always, I'm just curious. And so as a kid, I had that, and I always wanted to travel, and I got into some wrong crowds. I was in multi-level marketing when I was 18 years old. And how many, just curious, how many people in the room have ever been in multi-level marketing? So quite a bit. Like, multi-level marketing is an amazing thing with their leadership training, the way they teach you self-help and self-growth. It really is a phenomenal thing. And as an Amish kid that didn't really have any business sense, it didn't really have any exposure to the outside world, that was curious and hungry to learn, that was an absolute game changer in my life. I mean, I started reading books. Magic of Thinking Big was one of the first ones I read that really blew my mind. And so I started reading books and really came alive with the hope that I could actually be a business person, actually be successful, do something that is more than just average. And so because of that, I moved to Florida. I mean, I was there, I just kind of felt stuck. I was in wrong crowds. After 2 years of doing the multi-level marketing, I learned I really sucked at it. I mean, I was really bad. I mean, I was no good at it. I did not learn it. I did not have, I just wasn't in circles of people that were successful. I wasn't in the crowds where they were really going places. And 2 years in, I was way worse off financially, and I had originally thought I was going to the top. I mean, there was no doubt. I was not lacking confidence. I was going to the top. Like, I was going to be rich. I was going to have, this lifestyle of, convenience is what, really what I was looking for. And, it was the exact opposite. I had no credit. I had ruined my credit. I had creditor debt. I was in the party scene, and so I moved to Florida just to kind of try and reset and get a fresh start. And never thought really that I would stay. In March, it was 17 years that I lived in Florida, Sarasota, Florida. And I mean, since I know Lancaster now for 2 years, it's up for debate, but before this, I was pretty sure Sarasota is where God lives. It is so nice in Sarasota.
In the wintertime, for sure.
Yes. I mean, it is so nice in Sarasota. I mean, I just don't know why he would live there, but there's really something special happening in Lancaster, so he might live here too, I'm not sure. But anyway, so I moved to Florida, and the market crashed. When I moved to Florida, I had $600 cash and a 500 credit score, just to give you guys an idea of how bad it was. And, it probably was not necessarily wisdom to have that kind of a situation and move somewhere where you have no connections. I had one uncle that lived in Florida at the time. He still lives there. But fast forward, I got into the food industry by force because everything I knew in construction went away. I was in the food industry for a very long time, 9 years. And I very slowly used prepaid credit cards to rebuild my credit. And in 2014, after 7 years of working really hard, I bought my first property that was a house hack. And we still own that property, we still live in it, we're still house hackers, we're very simple people. And bought that house, and then in 2017 I got married to Erin. And when I got married to her, I always joke that she told me I need to step my game up at that point. But I was just inspired to do a little bit more. And so we took a risk. I quit my job. We bought a pool business, and I got my real estate license. The real estate license was more of a thing where I was interested in investing than I was in sales. And started, sold a couple $200,000 houses, and soon realized that I loved selling real estate a whole lot more than scrubbing swimming pools. And so we sold the swimming pool business 2 years later, and been selling real estate for full time, I think 3 years now. And I will say, it's one of the things where I'm as surprised as anybody is to hear it being said, or having a story in a book and hear it being said that I'm in the top 1% real estate. I mean, I'm the most simple guy you will ever meet, but I know how to work hard, and I value relationships over transactions. The money is in the relationships.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I felt. I felt that pretty early on, about relationships, about being open to share your Rolodex, about, and your curious spirit. That may be one of the #1 keys to your success, is to be curious and not settle for, just the status quo. Just go out and get it. It seems to me that, okay, so there had to be some kind of a major shift. It seems to me, 20 years old, $650 cash, 500 credit score. I mean, at some point, you just like, who is this kid? What, how do you, so what was sort of the thing that, multi-level marketing, would you say that reading was one of the things that really changed the course of your life? Or like, how do you go from 20 years old in that kind of shape to, how old are you now?
Yes.
37.
I mean, 32?
Oh, wow.
37.
38, just turned
38, okay. So 18 years ago. How do you make that shift? How do you make that transition? What was like I mean, you had light bulb moments, I'm sure, but what was that transition like?
Well, I mean, it was a long transition, and there was many different instances that were pivotal. I mean, I would say the shift happened when I was 22 years old. I met God, and that moment was a moment that forever changed who I was. In my core, how I operated, how I look at the world, how I look at people, completely changed. From that moment on, money was a complete different thing to me. I viewed the world completely different, and how I operate is completely different. And just to give you an idea, my curious spirit, when I met Jesus, I know this is an investor's event, so I don't want to get off on a bunny trail, but the best investment I've ever made in my life was my investment with the Lord. The best investment was my investment in my relationship with the Lord. And the reason why I say that is I found out He's actually real. He's not some God up in the sky. He's not somebody that you talk about. He's somebody who actually shows up and talks to you about your personal life and the situation, and He speaks into it. And when He does, everything changes. So that's what happened when that was when I was 22 years old. It was 2 years after I was in Florida. And so from that point forward, yes, I still read. I still grow myself, but it's not for selfish ambitions in a way. Where before, I was doing it because I wanted a big house, and I wanted to live on the water, and I wanted to have this glitz and glamorous lifestyle. And now I do it because I love people. I love serving people. And the money is something that I can use to build the kingdom, but it's not so much about the money. I mean, the real reward comes from relationships. Like sitting here and being here knowing you guys is worth more than the money is. Now the money, I mean, let's be real, the money is great. Right?
Yeah, I told him today, I read his chapter, I told him today, like, 6% of 35 million, that's like a lot.
It is. I mean, I'm as surprised as anybody. It is. But that was a real shift, was at 22, and it took a long time. I feel like people now look at us and they think, man, it must be nice. What they don't see is those 9 years I worked at the food distribution company after I was walking with the Lord, working consistently, doing the right thing over and over and over again with no visible results.
Good stuff.
I did that for 7 years before I bought the house hack that we were in. The house hack was the first real pivotal moment financially. You know, I started coming home from work, I had my paycheck, I had renters in the house, and they paid me a check that was as much as my paycheck. I took my housing
That's
costs.
a clue.
Yeah, I mean, you know, personal financial statement. I took the liability of housing out. And so anybody who's young, I mean, I think that's one of the wisest thing a young person can do is house hack.
There's a side benefit to that. So you're all familiar with house hacking, right? So you buy a fourplex and you live in the one unit and you rent the other 3 out and you live for free or maybe even better. But there's another benefit to that other than just living for free. I mean, you know, what happens to real estate over the long term, it normally goes up eventually, depending on where you bought in the cycle and how long it takes, it eventually goes up. But if you live in that house 2 out of the last 5 years and that happens to you, you benefit from appreciation. And if you go to sell that house, it's tax-free.
That's right.
So you get to pocket, if you're single, $250,000 in tax-free cash. If you're married, $500,000 in tax-free cash. So there's more benefits to just getting free rent when you house hack. So good stuff.
That's great.
So what were some of the habits, like maybe habits that you were actually participating in, or maybe thoughts that you had to like totally change? Like what were some of the bad habits that you picked up that you had to break over a period of, let's say, 5 years or 10 years, like when you were coming out of that, or teachings? Like how did you get, you know, I mean, obviously you had to be committed to pay off that debt and get to the point where you could buy your first investment house while you were working, you know, a job. But what were some of the habits and sort of misconceptions that you had to sort of get rid of and start living different, thinking different?
The biggest habit that changed, that's the most powerful habit that I have, was I started giving. So before that, I never gave. Now giving is one of the biggest habits that we have, and we're constant. I mean, giving, not just money, but money, it's a powerful thing when you start giving money. And so I started giving money, and obviously I started with tithing, and then I would do above that here and there randomly. But giving, hands down, was the biggest thing that changed in that progression.
Wow, that's good. What led you to write the chapter in the book, and why did you write the chapter, and how has it helped you since it came out? It's 6 months old?
It came out in January.
Okay.
So it's Amos King's fault that I wrote the book. So I met Amos King last year, and we went golfing down in Florida, and afterwards, he never mentioned that he was going to do it. He refers me to Kyle Wilson and tells me I should write my story. And my first response was the same way that my response was when they asked me to come speak here. Why would I ever do that? I mean, why would I ever do that? I mean, why would I? You know, it's like, I've never done anything like that. Why would I, right? But you know, one of the other habits that I would say is a big one for any one of us, doesn't matter where we are. You know, you can be a Dave Zook, or you can be me, or you can be somebody who was where I was 15 years ago. Getting out of your comfort zone is one of the #1 ways to expand and grow your life in any area. If there is a comfort zone that you feel that you don't, you know, you have an opportunity to do something, and you feel the resistance, and you feel that fear of stepping out, and it's way outside of what is normal for you, that is the #1 sign that you should do it. And so that's the only reason why I wrote that book.
I've said a number of times, I've said great things happen outside of your comfort zone.
That's correct.
Yeah. What was the most impactful book you ever read? I think soon after, I think I know the answer. You told me soon after we met. Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, I think so. So one of the reasons why when I Facebook stalked you way back before I knew you, I see this Elevate event where you're speaking at, and I see the speaker list, and it's Daniel Laban's on there. And I'm thinking, you have got to be kidding me. Honey, pack the bags, we're going to Lancaster. That's it, because Thou Shalt Prosper is the book. I read that book in 2017, and that book was the biggest, not the biggest, I'd say the most powerful paradigm shift that I've had from reading books. Yeah.
You're like most of these guys, like myself, 8th grade education. What was, you're all about education, just not conventional education. You start telling me about some kind of course that you took lately, like that, pretty high level where I think they were teaching sales or leadership or whatever. Can you tell us about that? Do you know what that was? In the last 6 or 8 months or so.
I think it was the Ricky Carruth workshop. So Ricky Carruth is, he's got a brand called Zero to Diamond. He's the #1 realtor in Alabama, Gulf Shores, Alabama. And I found him 3-4 years ago. He has been selling over 100 units a year as a single agent with one assistant for like 6 years straight. And he's an absolute stud when it comes to a realtor. I mean, he just is one of those A players. And I ran across his teachings, and his teachings are identical to how I built my business, where relationships over transactions. He said when he really took that serious, his business exploded. And he cold calls. I mean, he's a cold calling machine, and he cold calls people, and he listens to what they say. And if they say they're not interested, he says, "Okay, thank you, bye." And he says, he says, "How can I? I'm just looking to see how I can help you today." And they say, "Well, my cat's sick." He says, "All right, well, I'll take her to the vet for you." I mean, he's that kind of guy. He really would. He is like radical in how he does it. So recently, he had a workshop where he opened it up for 100 agents, where you could come in and spend a whole day with him, and he would teach in depth what his day-to-day activities were. So I went to that in February.
What did you learn? I mean, we want to hear. I mean, if you're talking about a sales guy like that, like at the workshop, day to day, what did that look like? Like, what does his day look like?
So very simple. He starts early. He has a routine in the morning, and then he schedules his day around. If he has inspections he needs to be at, he goes. He has his schedule, and then when he's not scheduled in actively with clients, he calls people and he builds his database, and he has one focus: be connected with as big of a database as you can with people who own the type of real estate you want to sell. Don't worry about buyers. Focus only on sellers and build that database. And if you have the database and you stay in front of that database, over time, your business will explode. That's how he got to where he was, where he's doing over 100 deals a year as a single agent with a secretary. I think he had 30,000 emails from homeowners in his market that own real estate that he wants to sell that he sends an email to every week.
And that is interesting. That's gold right there. How many realtors do we have in the room? And how many of you guys focus on the seller? There you go. Most of you would probably focus on a buyer, right? Well, what is one thing about a seller that might be a little different than a buyer? They have assets. They have money. What else is it? Why focus on the seller?
So if you have, as a realtor, whoever has the listings controls the market, period.
Tell the story about the couple who you keep selling like waterfront homes like over and over again. Would that be an example of focusing on the seller?
No, they're the buyer.
Okay, but you sold their stuff, like,
Right.
you keep selling their stuff.
Well, the key, if you're a realtor, if you're good, the first sale is the beginning. So every time I sell a house, when I sold the first piece of real estate to you, I'm not focused on that sale. I am focused on you, and I'm focused on making sure that whatever happens over the next 10 years, every single real estate deal you do, I do. That's what I focus on. So a seller, if you have sellers, you can have 10 listings, and they can all be shown in one day by 10 different agents, and you're not doing anything, right? So that's multiplying. That's why if you have 10 buyers, you have to be there showing them all the properties yourself. If you have 10 listings, you can have 20 agents doing 20 showings, and you're on the beach. And you get 5 offers, and you didn't do anything, right? You just have the listing up. So that's the power of the listings. But back to these guys that you want to go to, you like this story.
They will too.
Yeah. So back to that is, I don't care if it's a buyer or a seller. My goal is everybody knows people that are going to do real estate. Real estate deals happen every single day. The question on who is going to be a part of that is always based on conversations and relationships. And so I sold a house my first full year. Towards the end of the year, it was in November, I did a deal for $1.9 million to a gay couple out of DC. And it was the easiest deal I had done all year. It was $1.9 million, it was a 40-day closing, got my check, it was the easiest deal I did all year. Well, fast forward to today, they've done $8 million, $7 million, $6 million, sold that one again, sold the $8 million one again. I've made more money on that one customer than I did in probably 50 other ones combined. It's unbelievable. That's the story you're looking for.
Yeah. I want to hear about husband and wife team. Like, how is it working together? I saw Aaron on some emails floating back and forth with my team. What are the rules? Can you talk about like how that works? And that wasn't always like that, right? Was that pretty recent?
Yeah, so it's awesome. So in 2021, Erin quit her job. She had a career job. She has the high, she's a smart one. She has a bachelor's degree and has had a career job. All kinds of benefits.
Better looking than you are too.
Oh my goodness. You're right, she is, yep. I'm a good salesman. So she quit her job in 2021, came on board, and does my transaction coordinating, my marketing, my weekly email that goes out every Wednesday at 10 a.m. It came out today. She does all of that. I'm involved and I know what's in it, but she does all that. And then the transaction coordinating, when you're running deals, like right now I think we have a dozen deals going and 5 listings up currently, between the two of us. That's a lot of emails. For the realtors, that's a lot of emails. You have lenders, you have title companies, you have inspectors, you have appraisers, you have all these different emails that are with one transaction. So she has stepped in and does all of the filing and the emails with outlining the timelines with the contracts and making sure the transactions are progressing the way they need to, so we don't have last-minute firestorms. And it makes to where I can be relieved of that, don't have to think about it. I always hated that. I don't like sitting in front of a computer. And so that has been really good. And then we bought 2 properties in 2021, and we have our house hack, and we have another one, single-family residence that is short-term rental. So she manages both of those. And then we are building one. The one house we bought, we bulldozed, and we're going to build a new one, and we're going to short-term rent that one as well. So we're having fun. It's a lot of fun working together.
What do you think? And this is educational for all of us. But what do you think when you hear somebody say, "Yeah, I got I got like 5 or 6 different brokers. They got this whole market covered. They're all, running around, I'm pretty diversified, and they're gonna bring me all the deals and stuff. What comes to mind when you think about that? So,
You're talking about a buyer or an investor that
An investor.
has like everybody working for it?
yeah,
That's a good question. So I'll give you a funny story. I had 2 distressed properties listed recently. The first one was listed first. Guy comes to me, wants to go see it, direct buyer, right? Has this big story, we're big investors, we want to buy in the area, we want to work with you, we want to build a relationship with you, and saying all the right things. Probably didn't quite work, got their information. A couple weeks later, listed another one, and 2 seconds after it's listed, 10 o'clock at night, they are bombarding my phone and they want to, see this house right now, they want to buy it, and I can tell they're annoyed that I didn't send it to them right away, right? We're going to put it on the market. We had an appraisal, we were going to let the market speak. We're not going to sell it off market. And so next morning I talked to them at 7:15. They want to make an offer. I say, okay, we're going to find out what the seller wants to do. They had highest and best by Thursday at noon. And so on Wednesday, this was on Tuesday, so on Wednesday, this guy is calling me again at 8 o'clock at night. And I sent him a message, and I just told him, I said, it's Thursday at noon is the deadline, so no need to write your offer up right now. Well, he was so impatient with me, he got one of his other buddies, wrote up an offer, and had that agent send it to me, just because he was annoyed that I didn't give him the, that's a prime example of the guy you're describing, right? So I don't mind if somebody does that. How people conduct themselves is a reflection of them. How I conduct myself is a reflection of me. And I don't worry about judging people. If somebody wants to do that, good for you. I mean, I hope it works for you, Obviously, in that situation, when that happened, that offer went to the bottom of the pile, in my opinion, in the sense that when I'm representing that to the seller, I'll point that out. This guy is going and getting another agent and writing an offer and bringing it to me just because I wouldn't, jump at his beck and call, Does that answer your question?
no.
No?
I'll bring it to you. I'll softball it a little slower. So, do you have if you've got a sweet property that, let's say you got a seller that's fairly motivated and whatever, and you feel like there's good value there, do you send it out to your entire database, or do you have a few select clients in your back pocket that you would reach out to first?
So I always educate the seller, because it's the seller's decision on how they want to sell their property. So if a seller tells me we're in distress and we do not want to put it on the market, we do not want to show it, we want a flash sale, and if we can get a certain number, I let him know what I think it would sell on the market, and I let him know what I think I could sell it to a private guy in my back pocket right now. If they tell me they want to do the back pocket deal, I bring it to you. You bought Wisteria that way. So when I came up to Elevate, when we met, I had 2 listings I showed you. One was pre-market, the other one was an off-market, and you bought the one on Wisteria, and that was the exact situation.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've found is normally players have a short list of
That's correct.
people
That's correct.
that, and again, it's the importance of dealing with an A player when it's your turn to perform. Okay, maybe the property's not right for you, maybe it's not the right one, and that's fine. But when it is, and it's your time to perform, after you build that relationship, you want to be on that short list.
Right.
You want to be the first call, because oftentimes what ends up on the MLS is, the leftovers, the short list. I mean, we just recently we were able to buy a small farm that was a relationship deal. It was short list. He had three guys on his short list, and one of them happened to be a friend, and so we were like, fourth in line. But I always kind of laugh when when somebody takes the approach and, oh yeah, like I'm talking to like 5 different brokers and I got this market covered, and it's probably he don't have anything because, you know, he's so scattered, he don't have that relationship, he didn't make the short list, and he'll get whatever's left over after, you know, the short list is combed over it. Is that right?
Yes, yes. And the story of the guy that, you know, is telling me he wants to build a relationship and then acts in that manner on the second one, that's an example of somebody that's opposite of how you operate, which is who you're describing. And the value of a working in relationship, and, you know, like for you, you know, the value you have added to me is so far beyond, almost to your own harm, because, you know, like I've had some of your friends said, you know, it's amazing Dave is giving your information out when you're wanting to buy in my market, because you should be scared that you're not at the top of my short list, right? Right? That's a scarcity mentality. But the way that you have operated, that makes to where you go really high on that short list. If there is one in my back pocket that is a screaming deal, I bring it to people who are loyal and add value.
What do you say to people, whether it's, you know, let's say you have a seller, or let's say you have somebody that you know, doesn't want to pay the commission, and they're trying to sell off market, or they're trying to, you know, get a discount on the commission. Like, what's your answer to somebody that just, you know, feels like the commission is a cost and they want to go around it and try to do something on their own, specifically a seller in this case?
That is a very good question. So, the way I look at my business is there are an abundance of Dave Zooks in the world. I just have to find them. And when I find people that are not seeing value because for whatever reason, like they might think, I'm just paid too much. They're entitled to their opinion. I don't mind, honestly. Somebody who thinks they can do what I do. Well, I could take pictures, I could list my own house, I could sell my own house. Fantastic, sell your own house. That just takes it off my plate so that I can go find another Dave, right? Because there's plenty of people out there. I don't need every sale. So I look at it and I say, if somebody doesn't want to pay the commission, that's fine. I'm a professional, I work very hard, and I believe I add more value than money that I take. And if that is a difference of opinion, I respect your opinion, and maybe we're not made to work together. And like, I'll tell you this story that I've had, you know, this does happen. You know, just to give you an idea of how I think in that scenario, I had recently a guy that I listed a house, he owned the house next door, he owned the house across the street. In the process of me selling the house next to his, I got to know him. And so he sends me a couple emails over the winter telling me he wants to sell the one across the street from his. And so we scheduled an appointment, and you know, he's emailing me saying he wants to sell his house. And so, fantastic, you know, another listing, go over there, meet him, and we go through the whole thing, the whole CMA printed out, everything ready to go. And we get down, he showed me the entire house. And then we walk to the front yard and he says, I'm going to sell it for sale by owner. I want to know how much you think it's worth. Right? So that happens as a realtor. I mean, I don't know if that's ever happened to you, but that happens. And it's like, what do you do in that situation? You know, in the flesh you want to say, well, you little, you want to, really let it happen, right? I mean, that's what your initial, I mean, if you would just do what you want to do, that's what your initial thought is. But, my approach to it is, I never waste my time. I invest my time. And if at that moment, I have a decision to make if that last 30 minutes of my time was a waste or if it was invested. And so I looked at him and I said, fantastic. I think it's worth this much. If I would list it, I would list it at this. And if you list it, make sure you make an owner profile, put it on Zillow, take professional pictures, and good luck to you. And I helped him. And funny enough, he sold it, and the guy that's buying it was referred to a lender that thought I referred the buyer, and I didn't, and I ended up on this email thread with the signed contract for the off-market house for that, with the buyer. And I'm looking at it going, what is happening? So, it was so weird. So I called the guy, and I said, dude, you're buying this house. He said, oh yeah, Phil Graber referred me to this guy. I said, that's where the disconnect is. It wasn't me, it was Phil. And so I spent 30 minutes talking to him, helping him. It was a complicated property to sell. So I gave him all kinds of tips on how to solve some of the problems I knew he was going to face as a buyer for that house. The reason why I do that is because it's relationships over transactions. That guy might sell that house later. The guy that is selling it, he might have a brother that wants to buy a house in the future. If I help them, if I listen to what they want to do and I help them, I'm investing my time no matter what the outcome is. And who knows, I might get something out of it, I might not, but that's how I approach it.
I thought you were going to say that you went to your truck and got him, you went to the store and got him a for sale by owner sign.
I'm not that nice.
So you mentioned in the book, you talked a little bit about your multi-level marketing, you talked about the books, so when you think about a situation like that, where you come out the other end of that situation and you're just like, oh my goodness, what do you think about, you have a decision to make. Like, you could look at that and you're like, oh my, that was a waste of whatever, a year or two, or however long you were in that situation. Or you could look at that saying, if it had not been for that, I probably wouldn't have read those books. I probably wouldn't have learned. I'm fairly similar situation. I was part of a group, I forget what they were, but every month you would get a book. And
Book of the month.
It was a multi-level marketing thing. Yeah, it was like, I don't know, 20 years ago, whatever.
About the same.
And 15 years ago. And because of that, I also read some good books. And I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and I read, everything else that he wrote. And then I read, and I forced myself to read. And I didn't like reading. But after about 6 weeks of forcing myself to read, I started liking it. Now I read all the time. But I think one of the lessons there is, whatever situation you get in, you choose. Probably whatever situation you are in, if you want to, you can pick out something good. Whatever situation you're in, you can probably pick out something bad. It's up to you to decide what that's going to be. Just think of something. A bad situation. Maybe it's a bad relationship, a bad business relationship. But then if you go down that path a little bit further, well, because of this bad relationship, I met such and such, and we ended up doing something together. It really often it depends on you to decide. You're going to look at this from a positive perspective and get something valuable out of it, or are you going to look at it from a negative perspective? And I'm guessing you would say, from that experience, you got value out of it just from reading some books and stuff. Is that right?
Yeah, that's so true. We always have choices and decisions we can make. If I look back over the last 20 years of my life, and I would equate one thing to how I got into my current situation, I would say it was reading. 100%. Because I never read anything apart from the Sunday comics before that. Quite literally. I didn't read. And, we have pretty much an addiction in our house where we have a bookshelf that is overloaded. We have over 500 books on it, and we're buying books all the time. We read books because the thing in life is circumstances don't have to change for our life to change. Our perspective only has to change. That's it. And our perspective changes by reading. So you can have two people in the same situation, and one is reading and he changes his perspective and his situation completely changes. The other guy's never does because he doesn't change his perspective. So I would definitely say that, you know, while it got me in a really bad financial situation, even worse, doing the multi-level marketing, the value of reading was the best thing that ever happened to me.
You talk a lot about adding value. Are you a good receiver?
Ask Aaron. I mean, I try to, yes. I mean, I had a lot of fun with the car you gave me. I mean, we had that thing rolling pretty good on the way over here. You know, he gave, you know, I'm telling you that the hospitality, Jake picked us up at the airport right at the step, and we come over and Dave gives us a car that is so much fun to drive, we almost missed the meeting. I mean, we almost decided to cancel it, it's so much fun to drive it. But I would like to think that, but I'm not sure.
So a quick example was, and I'm trying to, my wife and I are trying to train ourselves to be good receivers. And, you know, and I talked to her, you know, one time she was in the grocery store line and she forgot her credit card and somebody behind her offered to pay for her groceries. And, oh, man, I don't want, you know. I'm like, you just robbed her of the feeling that she would have got by allowing her to help you. So anyway, so we're learning. So we were just on our 25th wedding anniversary in Destin, Florida, just the last couple of days. And series of events. Anyway, she took a tumble on her bike and skinned her knees, and somebody saw it happen. And it happened to be just somebody who lived just up the street. And she was like, let's go back to the house and let's bandage you up, let's clean you up, whatever. She was bleeding a little bit. It wasn't terrible, but and it would have been easy to say, no, I'm good, But she remembered, and she said, yeah. And we went into their house. We had a great time, and she got cleaned up. And a half hour later, we're going down the road again. But sometimes it takes more discipline to be a good receiver. I'm working on that, so I wanted to hear your thoughts on it. What needed to happen what needed to change? Like when you started selling real estate, and we're going to have Q&A here just shortly, so get your questions ready. In fact, I got something fun. Would you, Daniel, you're going to be the judge. You're going to rate the quality of the question, and whoever has the best question for Marlin's going to sign a copy of the book. Would you sign a copy of the book? Okay. So Daniel agreed to do it, and you agreed. Okay, good. So get your questions ready. We're going to have Q&A just shortly here. What needed to change? What mindset did you need to, what needed to change from, you were selling $200,000 and $300,000 houses, and now you're selling, what's the highest ticket item house that you sold?
8.8.
8.8 million, and how many houses in the last 12 months exceeded $1 million? About?
I'm not sure.
Like
but,
5, 10?
Over 5.
Okay.
It's between 5 and 10.
Okay. So what needed to happen in your mind to be able to play at a higher level? Like who did you need to become? What was the transformation there, or was that something that you really had to work on? Did you have to get into other circles? Were you very intentional about it? Did it just kind of happen because people gravitated to your giver mentality? How did that happen?
I thought you were going to say my good looks. Yeah, mentality works. So. I mean, the first year I was in real estate, I sold 6 deals, and they were all under $300,000. And I see the other agents in the office that are selling $500,000 houses, and I'm thinking, man, if I could just sell a $500,000 house, life would be good. Like that, I mean, it just seemed like it was like a mountain. like up there. And, fast forward, I don't even really know what to say. I think it comes back to, I really believe that if you're doing the right thing and you work really hard, good things happen. And I don't have a magic formula. I mean, I would just give an example. One of those 6 deals that were under 300,000, one of those deals was a buyer that is a really good friend of mine because, I sold him a house, became really good friends. He worked at Wells Fargo, and we became really good friends. He started referring me to people because he was in the private side of the bank of Wells Fargo. And because of him, like a year and a half later, I had a buyer and a seller on an off-market hotel in front of each other where we would have gotten 2 points on. That was an $8.5 million deal that we didn't get. And that's the thing with realtors also, we miss more than we get. So everything, the 35 million, I miss more than that. If we don't get all of them, and you have to realize that, you can't control what comes in. You have to work really hard, and sometimes you work really hard on one for 2 months, and the thing falls out at the end on some unforeseen circumstance that is completely out of your control. And that's something that you have to pick yourself up from and move on. You can't dwell on that, because if you dwell on that, I mean, one of the things that one of the older agents told me early on in my office, he sold over 100 million last year as a single agent, commercial real estate. He told me early on, I was in the office one time, and I had done a thing in a contract. It was my first. It was 1.9 million. It was 15-unit apartment contract. It was the first one I did over $1 million. And I forget what I did, but I did something, I screwed up, it cost me $5,000. I just agreed to take $5,000 out of my commission and give it to the buyer. And the buyer wanted me to lie to the sellers. I said, I'm not doing that, I'm just going to own up to it. And so I was in the office bellying about this about 2 days later, and this agent that sold 100 million last, he pulled me into his office, he said, if you're going to make it in this industry, you need to focus on the money that you're making, not the money that you're not making. And that really hit. Because I think all of us, anybody who's in business, anybody who's as an investor, you're going to lose sometimes. And you're going to sometimes make mistakes that you have to fix. And when you do, don't belly about it. Fix it, move on. Go find the next deal and keep your energy high.
Great learning environment, right?
Yes.
You can chalk it off as a great learning experience.
Correct. It's your education.
Yep. Talk about, so if you were to, okay, so at one point you thought, man, if I could just sell a $500,000 house, you would have arrived. Well, talk about, like, what is that, like, what drives you, what makes you want to get up and hustle and go out and do your thing? Are you just like a greedy capitalist, or is it like what drives you? Like, what is that?
That's a good question. So, I think it's twofold. One, I naturally thrive with a challenge. If I don't have something in my life that is a challenge, I'm bored. One of my mottos is normal sucks. Normal is just boring. I need something that is like hard to do. I need something that is like difficult.
I usually tell my teenagers, like, when you're a teenager, all you want to do is fit in. When you're our age, all you want to do is stand out. That's right. Your biggest fear is like fitting in.
Right. Right. So I think that's one of them. I'm just naturally like that. But the other thing is, if you have a biblical theology and worldview, we're all given a measure of gifts and talents that are for the benefit of other people. And it's not honorable to sit on. At the end of my life, I want to be somebody that gave it his all in becoming the best version of myself that I can be. I think that drives me more than the challenge does. You know.
So I got a question for you guys. So my brother and I had this conversation just lately. You know, the conversation comes up sometimes about, well, he's starting another business. Like, how much is enough? Like, and we decided that if we had the ability to grow our team, mature, you know, develop leaders, and you know, we were doing what the best we could do in our capacity, and we didn't do that kind of stuff, we would be wasting our talents. And so how many of you think that if he would sell his $100 million and then he'd go retire on the beach, how many of you think that it'd be a loss for Sarasota, and it'd be a loss for the family, it'd be a loss for investors who want to buy stuff, you know, that it goes somewhere else. So I just believe if you love what you're doing and you're out there serving people and serving them really well, and you don't do that, I think that's a waste. So whether you go on and make $100 million, I hope you do. You know, if you don't continue to serve in that market, I just believe that's a waste. So go keep hustling.
I have full intentions.
So, okay, so we're going to get to the Sarasota market. We're going to be running out of time here at this time, and I want to have plenty of time for Q&A. But Sarasota real estate, you'll sell real estate to everybody in this room if they come down and see you. You've got stuff.
Absolutely.
Okay.
First
So
come, first serve.
get in line. So has it cooled off a bit? What's the market like? What are you seeing in the market with the interest rates where they are? Has you know, I know in the last 2 years it's been hotter than fire, but like, what is it like in the last 6 months?
Yeah, so the market is very different from what it was. So last April, a year ago, right now is when the shift started happening. So last year in April, right at this time, we had less than a month of inventory in the Sarasota County. And right now we have 2.9, almost 3 months. The average days to contract last year was 7 days. Today it's 21 days. And so what you have is a very complex market. So you have sellers that are stubborn and refuse to listen to the agents and are valuing and listing their properties as if the market hasn't shifted, right? And then you have buyers with cash. We have well over 50% of all our transactions are cash. If we were looking at our queue, I bet you 75% of everything we have is cash. It seems it's just almost all cash since the interest rates have gone up like that. And so the cash buyers are buying properties, but they are not paying those crazy sellers. They are looking at the market. They're looking at the comps. I mean, we just had one on Monday that we signed for $510,000. It was listed for $545. In February of this year, I had a house in that same neighborhood that was a bidding war and it sold for $570, and I think this one is better. And so it has cooled off a lot. It's a lot more friendly to buyers. All of that being said, our median home sale price is still 10% higher right now than it was last year at this time. So it's not the 100 grand over list price anymore. It's not 12 offers per listing anymore. But and they're still selling. Buyers are still paying, and they're paying more than they were last year. But it's a lot slower, and it's a lot more like it's a lot more fun because you can actually negotiate again. You know, you don't have to just go and throw the bank, you know, the book at the sellers to get a deal. It's a lot more fun.
So how about, let's go to short-term rental. What's the current, this may be a question for Landon, but you know, you're pretty well connected in that space too. What is the current sort of temperature on the short-term rental market? Has supply caught up with demand? What's that feel like in the last let's say, 8 months compared to the last 24 months prior?
I get this question a lot. So in our experience, I mean, we've been short-term renting since 2015 in Sarasota, on our house hack. And we have our new house up since June of last year, and we're absolutely crushing it. I mean, it's as good as it's ever been. So I think the short-term rental market is very similar to any other business thing, where you have probably, you want to get in the top 20%. So the bottom run-of-the-mill 80% ones, you're going to see a lot of those going back to annual renting, and you're going to see some of those selling, because they're going to start just breaking even, I think. Because I do think that market, if you're not in the top 20% where you have a premium product, you have experiential type of stays, you have key features that people want, and you have wow photography, you have things that make it really stand out, and you're in that top percent. If you have that, you're not going to have any problems. If you have one that is like 5,000 other ones that is just average on everything, pictures, listing description, I think those, they might carry the cover cost, like the carry cost, but I don't think they're going to be real cash cows.
Have you seen a real rise in rates in the last 2.5 years, in short-term rental rates, nightly rates?
Big time.
And do you feel like that's sustainable? Do you think that will continue, or do you feel like that's going to cool off as well?
I just read the book, The Creature on Jekyll Island. So I have a hard time believing it's coming down, but I don't know. For anybody who's read that book, it's about the Federal Reserve, or anybody who hasn't, but as long as they keep printing money and pumping money into the system where it doesn't crash, probably the prices and the rental market isn't going to come down. If they would quit that, which they should, then probably it would come down.
So for those of you who are, thinking about the Sarasota market, here's just a little tidbit. I don't know if you know this or not, but Allied Van Lines, did I share this with you, or you might have read it somewhere too? Allied Van Lines just put out their report saying, and according to their stats, Sarasota was the second most moved to city in the United States.
Wow.
So, might be a good place for short-term rentals. It's a desirable. One of the things that happens when you travel to different places, you appreciate some stuff sometimes that that you didn't even think about before. So we were in Destin, and at sunset you wanted to be at the beach. Well, at sunset this time of the year, the sun starts to, it's like over pretty far. It's like just barely over the water. And some parts of the year it's on land. Well, there's something special about the sun going down over the water, and I noticed that about Sarasota now. Like when I see that in Sarasota, I'm like, it's unique. There's not a whole lot of places in the world. Very small percentage of places in the world where the sun actually goes down over the water, like compared to the rest of the world. Like there's not many places, and that's something that I'll now appreciate about Sarasota that I wouldn't have if I would have went to Destin over the weekend. So
We get that comment a lot. I've heard that from numerous times, people who say they've been all over the world. Sarasota has the nicest sunsets they've ever seen. And it's every night.
Yeah.
We don't have clouds like you do here as much. As much.
all right, so Evan, I can tell you that our short-term rentals have been doing well in the Sarasota market. So
You're in the top. You have nice ones.
thanks to Dave Esch and Barb and for the work they did on that. You're right. Questions? Questions for the top 1% realtor in all of Sarasota. How many of you guys go to Sarasota in the wintertime? Yeah, quite a few. So how many of you would like to go to Sarasota and write off your trip in the wintertime? Like, you'd have to go see your rental and, maybe pull a weed or two, and, hang out with him, take him out to lunch, and, drive around and maybe look at another piece of property or two, whatever, make it a business trip. How many of you would like that? Yeah, there's all your customers.
That's right, we'll talk after.
Yeah. So, questions for the top 1% realtor in all of Sarasota? We have it for another 20 minutes, half hour. You guys go with the question, I'll repeat the question, and then you answer it, okay?
Where's Sarasota at with Airbnb residents? Are they still open to that?
Where is Sarasota at with being short-term rental friendly?
Good question. So there's a lot of confusion in the Sarasota market on what the actual law is when it comes to short-term rentals. So the city of Sarasota has its own jurisdiction, county has its own jurisdiction. The city has a statute specifically for short-term rentings, the county does not. The county, being that they don't, it reverts to the state overlay statute, which is residential zoning at 30-day minimums. So if you buy a residential house in the county, your law on paper rule is 30-day minimums per tenant. So the commissioners will openly tell you, and there's 5,000 short-term rentals in the county, they don't care. They made the deal with Airbnb and they're collecting millions of dollars in bed taxes. That being said, if a neighbor beside your house, which you have no idea if they're going to or not, but if the neighbor beside the house across the street, anywhere, I've sold houses that this happened to, and I've had buddies that bought houses and sold them that this happened to. If there's a neighbor that doesn't like it, they call code enforcement, they come out and they shut you down, and there is no way around it except direct bookings, which is hard.
So let me step in there on that one, and this is the importance of having A players on your team. So when I looked at, when I first became interested in the Sarasota market, I looked on the map and I thought, okay, we got Lido Beach here, you got Siesta Key here, right about there would be a nice place. And there's a lake right there, I want to be in that community, and so I ran it past Landon and you, and I was like, what do you think? And, well, that's a problem. Like, for one thing, you can't be in an HSA gated neighborhood and do short-term rentals, so that's out. Number two is you're south too far, you're outside of the city, so you're gonna have that problem that Marlin just talked about. So if you have an A player on your team, he will help you avoid making those what could be very expensive mistakes. And so if you're in the short-term rental market, Marlin knows, if that's your number one goal, Marlin knows where that line is. You want to be in this thing. Walking distance to downtown helps. One of the things too, the interesting thing, like maybe if you're interested in the market and you want to go buy, and maybe just go down and act like a consumer. Maybe spend 2 nights in northern Sarasota and 2 nights just inside the city if you want to do short-term rentals, but try different areas. Like, so last year we did short-term rental up right outside the neighborhood, right in the neighborhood, straight in from Marina Jack, where the Lido Key Bridge goes across. And this year we stayed south of just on Wisteria, just south of the Sarasota Memorial Hospital. I thought that we would like it better down there. Well, we weren't there more than a couple of days, and we're like, you know what? We like it better up there. You got the bike trail, you got downtown, you can walk to wherever, you can get around better. So if you're interested in that market, go down and spend a night or two in an Airbnb somewhere in the neighborhood, and then go over to this other neighborhood, and then go down, try it.
Yeah.
Try it before you buy it.
Great advice. Yeah. And to follow up, so the county is the 30 days, the city limits is 7 days. So in the city limits, it is still 7 days, nobody follows it, and it's the same rule. Unless your neighbor complains, they're never gonna slap you for doing 3-night minimums. If a neighbor complains, you still have a business, where in the county you don't have a business. if you spend $1 million on a place and you're running it illegal and you're at the mercy of the neighbor and they shut you down, your business is dead. That's not a good business plan. So it's very important. I mean, I'm amazed. 3 years ago, when I really started getting into the short-term rental space, I hired an attorney and sat down with an attorney to make sure I have my facts straight, because I've had property managers and realtors tell me I'm wrong. And you know, there's just a lot of information out there, and I think there is like a real big confusion about that everywhere. You know, it's a big part.
Yes.
You mentioned cash buyers. Compared to maybe 2018, before they pumped all this money in, do you feel like the Federal Reserve dumping money into had a lot to do with that, or was that about the same with like with 2018 and now?
So the question was, in regards to cash buyers, is the reason for the inflated prices because of all the new money that got pumped into the system? Did I get that right?
Not as much, but I guess, okay, so right now you're saying they still have cash. How do you predict that dynamic going forward? Like the affordability issue, you know, how long until people don't have cash? And then what?
So affordability issues, how long till people don't have cash? It's an interesting question.
You want to answer it?
Yeah. So real estate is local. Sarasota is a very desirable area. I always like to look back what happened in 2008 to 2010. How did that perform? You can answer that. How did that market perform? What happened in 2020 to 2022? How did the market perform? And it's kind of general. That was pretty much, you know, universal. It performed well. So people had money that they were spending. But how did, and I do that with different asset classes. Like, how did that asset class perform in 2008 to 2010? How did it perform in 2020 to 2022? But tell us about the real estate market in 2008 to 2010. What did that look like? And then as far as the money coming in, I think there's a difference between, what Benuel was sharing and the affordability and the investors coming in. So it's two different buyers. But, I mean, when you look at home ownership and you look at who's buying the homes, there's less consumers buying homes, more investors buying homes. So there is still a lot of money in the system, and as long as there is, I believe investing. It's one of the reasons I don't believe, you know, even with an economic disruption of some kind, more banks failing, whatever, multifamily apartments, big. I mean, there's some turmoil. There's a lot of people that were putting deals together that were using bridge loans to get to the point where then they would roll into conventional financing, and well, their cost of capital doubled. And so I don't believe we're going to see a real big crash in that space because there's so much money on the sidelines waiting to buy assets at decent prices. So there's still a lot of money in the system. Talk to us about 2008 to 2010. How did the market in Sarasota perform compared to other markets in the country?
So 2008 to 2010 was before I owned real estate, and it was before I was a realtor. But I have an idea. My understanding of 2008 to 2010 was that we lost 50% of our values. And so we had rows of houses. I mean, we should have gone and bought 50 of them. I mean, we had rows of houses that were, you know, $75,000 houses that are $500,000 houses right now. Like, no joke. They were everywhere. And, I mean, just to give you an idea, our house, that's a house hack, I bought that in 2014, shortly after, 2010. I mean, when I bought that, I thought I was overpaying like crazy, right? It was on the market for 6 months, didn't sell, paid 140 grand, 150 grand for it, and it's worth 550 today, right? And so that was probably, in 2014, it was 150, so it was probably like a 250 house in 2006 and 7, and then boom, it goes down to half. And so the rest of the country, Florida got hit hard during 2008 and 2010 because all the people that had 2 homes, one in the city and one in Florida, they dumped the one in Florida. So the Florida market lost way more on a percentage-wise than the rest of the country did for the most part. And so the question is, where are we today? In today's market, like the moving company, I know U-Haul also has stats that says Florida is like the #1 move-to state in the U.S. I know last year we also had foreign investment money. We had like 27% of all the foreign investment money in single-family residences in the United States was in Florida. It was like 6.8 billion just in the south part, like Orlando South. And so I think it might be a little bit different. I mean, I feel like, and to answer your question as far as the cash, so currently, most of the cash deals that I'm doing, there are some investors, but the investors are a little bit more reserved right now. I'm selling a lot of homes to people who are selling homes in Texas, selling homes in Massachusetts, selling homes in Chicago, selling homes in California, and reallocating their money. So they're selling their properties, cashing out, and they're coming to Florida and putting it back into the market. So how long that's going to stay, I just got done reading Ron DeSantis' book that just came out, The Courage to be Free. Highly recommend it for anybody that likes reading and is into the political scene. I think it's a great book for where we are currently. But our state has a lot going for itself from a political sense, and the capital is flooding to our state because of that. Flooding to our state. And so I personally believe, even if there would be a crash, I think the odds of the west coast of Florida turning into a California coastline is very high. I think with what Florida has going for itself and how many people are moving there, I think the values we see today, quite possibly in 10 years from now, we sit here and we say that house was $550,000, it's $1.2 million now. That's my expectation. And that's just my gut feeling. I don't know. Who knows? It's anybody's guess.
Anybody else? Over here.
Are you concerned at all about the insurance and taxes and how they change in Florida?
The question is, are you concerned at all about insurance and taxes and the changes that are happening in Florida right now? Or now or in the future?
I'm assuming you're referencing Ian? Hurricane Ian, or like...
No, I've just heard things about they reassess and your taxes go up, and some insurance companies are getting, they're getting scared, right? And mostly in the multifamily, but I don't know if that's also in the residential or not.
Residential, I'm not concerned about it. Our taxes are about 1.17% of your purchase price, and then if you homestead it, you get a 3% lock, no more than 3% increase each year going forward. And comparative to the rest of the country, I sell tons of houses to people that look at our real estate tax and say, this is half what I'm used to paying. That happens to me all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say Texas is like 2-ish.
Yeah. So I'm not concerned about the taxes. The insurance has some trouble. Hurricane Ian really disrupted the insurance market. There's a bunch of companies that have gone bankrupt. The problems is mostly in old product. So if you have a 70-year-old house that's not remodeled, you have, there's people that are, they had $1,500 a month homeowners insurance, and their company goes bankrupt, and they had not needed a 4-point to win because they didn't get a new policy for 10 years, and they go to get a new one, and their new premium is $5,000. That's happening a lot. And the insurance guy that I work with, he's had people that have sold their houses and moved out of the state because of it. But I don't think it's a problem as a whole. I think there's some isolated incidences like that. If you have new houses, insurance is cheap. If you have new construction, anything post 2010, you can get insurance for nothing. I mean, our houses are like $2,000, and we have short-term rental insurance, but our houses are like new, as far as the wind hit, all hurricane-rated impact.
We're going to do one more, and then we're going to give the signed copy. Daniel's the judge. I think you were first back there.
Well, thank you both for being here. I'd love to follow up a little bit on something you said in the beginning, Marlin, about Dave really does, the way he does business, he does business with people that he trusts. Kind of a question for both of you, but how do you evaluate how you can trust somebody when you are building a new relationship in business?
You're supposed to repeat the question.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't wait to hear your answer. How do you evaluate? Okay, so we're talking about relationships and doing business with A players and people with good reputations. How do you evaluate that, and how do you get yourself in a position where you only do business with good people, A players? So I'll go first. You don't always know. And sometimes the person you start with is not the person you end with, but I can tell you I would much rather go deep than wide. And you gotta kiss some frogs sometimes, and you don't always know. But I can tell you, I mean, there's some things that you can do on the front end to put yourself in a good position and get yourself set up nice, and that is ask people. I'm much more concerned about what other people say about Marlin than I am what Marlin says about Marlin. A good sales guy can, convince you of stuff that's not true. But if you hear, and this, I go through it all the time with, potential partners or business opportunities. If you ask enough, if you ask around and you hear from a number of people, you hear a lot of good things and you don't hear bad things. I mean, that's a giant shortcut. So reputation, you only get one, and if you ask around enough of people that have done business with him, again, I'd much rather talk to them about who he is than to talk about, than to hear him or somebody else talk about who they are and what they're about, and on and on. It's your turn.
Okay. So I'm not sure that I have a good answer for it. I mean, the thing that I would say is I err on the side of trusting too much and too easy over not trusting. And my attitude is I would rather be burned than not trust people. I think sometimes if we trust somebody, they'll rise to the occasion in your relationship that they wouldn't in somebody else's, like if the other person is giving them signals that they don't trust them. And so I think instilling trust into someone can be a real powerful thing, where they do rise to the occasion and kind of step up from what they normally are in character because of that confidence that we're instilling in them. So that's kind of how I would approach it. And there are times when you do get let down pretty good, and when that happens, it stings a bit. But I still think that's better than not trusting people.
I would 100% agree. I would rather start with trust and get burnt every once in a while than start with not trusting people. Always being afraid somebody's going to take me across. you know what, I had a story, but we're not gonna go there. We're out of time. Benio, I put Benio in a difficult position because one guy is gonna be his friend and everybody else is gonna hate him.
That's all right. I can always use another couple enemies. Levi, I love that question. That was really good. And by the way, that was a bunch of great questions. I'd like to ask a few more, but I guess we're out of time. Levi, Dave asked me to personalize that a bit.
No, I'm mad. Did I have him personalize, put Levi's name in the book?
I might still personalize it.
Yeah, you got the point. You got the point. What am I gonna do?
Levi, do you think you learned something there that you implement out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, I'm in business as well, and I think it's definitely one of the things that learning to be okay with, or figuring out how to be okay with taking the risk of bringing people on that are different than you, different backgrounds. Like, how do you evaluate how it's going to work out in the end, right? So that's, yeah, I appreciate that perspective, and it makes that you have to be willing to take a risk and trust in people that, like that Dave said, might just throw you once in a while. So.
Yeah, that's really good. And, you know, I know you've been through some of those situations where you've gotten burned. We all have.
Right.
And, you know, just because you learned some cool things tonight doesn't mean you're never going to get burned again either.
Right.
But, yeah, I really love especially what Marlin shared there about just being willing to go through that. And, yeah, that's pretty cool. So thank you.
One of the things I've observed is people who have a hard time trusting people normally can't be trusted. I don't know why that is, but normally if people have a hard time trusting other people, they can't be trusted.
Every time I'm working with somebody and they give me the impression that I'm not trustworthy, I always have the question in my mind immediately, why don't they trust me? It just always there's a reason why they don't trust me. Because I've not done anything to make them not trust, there's no reason why they shouldn't. It definitely does that.
All right, so Levi on the book, so could you put his name in there and put a little something in there and autograph it for him and hand deliver it to him?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was fun.
Can we hang out a little bit and do that afterward? I guess you're over.
Okay, thank you guys. That was fun. Where the other mic get to? There it is. We are a little bit later than we usually are, but this guy came all the way from Florida, so we're all right. It's 8:54. You alluded a little bit late. You alluded to it a little bit about what happened when you were 22 when you met Jesus. I think that is such a good story. Marlon and I chatted on the phone probably at least twice for 45 minutes in the last couple of weeks, and every time after the phone conversation I was like, we should have recorded that because it was that good. And that was one of the things that you talked about. So would you mind just a couple minutes just to give us a bit of a snapshot of what you shared?
Sure. So I'll make it quick. The thing that I discovered at that time in my life is God. Is that? I'm gonna take this. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
So what I discovered in that time of my life, in my walk with the Lord, is I discovered that the Lord is as honest with me as I am with Him. And I just very simply told Him, if He's real, I will serve Him. But I'm not going to serve a God I don't know. And I just had a very, very honest dialogue and conversation with the Lord, and I discovered that He's not offended by that. He actually wants to step into our lives and invade our lives and talk to us about our lives. And so when I did that, the one experience I had, and I've had many dreams, but I had a dream during that time, one of the first ones that radically changed everything about who I am, where I don't even remember the old self. I mean, I don't even recognize it anymore. But it was an event. He came to me in a dream, and he took me and he showed me where I am in the heavens, and I can see the farm I grew up on, and I can see myself in the vision, and the Lord is telling me what He saw, and He showed me that my entire life, before I knew Him, He saw everything that ever happened to me. And He absolutely had comments to make on the things that were hard in my life. And that is what changed me. It was not going to church. It was not going, I go to church. I do all the Christian things. But the personalization of knowing Jesus intimately for myself is what changed me. And I know now everything I do, He sees it. Everything I do. He knows what we do. And my heart is to serve Him well. That's why I'm here tonight. And so that story is a story that I honestly don't even think about it that much anymore, but it's the most pivotal moment in my life was when that happened. And so, since then, that's when I really got excited about my life, about, the gifts that I have, the dreams that I have, because I now knew that Jesus cares about me personally, and He wants me to go out and live my life. And so, that's an encouragement to anybody. God sees everything, and He knows everything about every single person in this room. And when He talks to us, it is personalized in a way where you would believe He would have gone to the cross just for you. Nobody else. And if that's not real, it can be. It can be. It's not something that is hard. It's not something that is difficult to do. It's something that is very simple. It just takes the courage to be honest. That's it. And so that's it. And if there's anything I would leave you with is you have full permission to get incredibly excited about your story, about your life, about what it is that you guys live for. You have families, you have gifts, you have talents. I think everybody has no problem getting excited about Dave Zook and being very impressed with what he's doing. But we tend to not give ourselves credit and get excited about our story. And I think the best thing we can do is get excited about our story so that we go out and do something and have some energy and return our gifts back to God at the end of our life, used, not buried, used. So anyway, that's it. Woo!
That's great. So Marlin brought a bunch of books along. They're on the table in the back, and he has offered to just donate them to the group here. We're doing a suggested donation of $10 a book. Actually, it's $10 a book or 2 for $25 if you want to do that. What's that? 2 for $25. $10 a book or 2 for $25. But if you don't have cash, or something and you want a book, you're welcome to take one. I think they brought almost 100 books along, and
if we run out, put your name down, send us an email, we'll send you one.
Okay, great. So pick up some books. He also has is it a weekly newsletter?
Yes.
Weekly newsletter, market report that he sends out. If you want to get on his email list, I will try to send that out in the email tomorrow too, but there is a paper on the back. There's a QR code to scan where you can hop on his email list.
Is the book on Audible?
Is the book on Audible? I don't think so.
It's digital, but not audible.
Digital, but not on Audible. So he's got a paper on the back with a QR code that you can scan to get on his email list. There's also a paper there where you can write down your name, email, whatever information if you don't have a smartphone or something to scan the QR code. What else?
I forgot something.
Yeah.
I forgot
You
one
did.
thing, yes. I forgot one thing. I have a short-term rental in Sarasota, 1,500 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, split floor plan, brand new pool, built on a double lot, 1-car garage that is not on the market, that is being run by Land and Schlabach, with B&B Breeze that is for sale. If somebody is in the market to buy one in the city limits, this would be a pretty good one. I think we're going to list it in about a week. I'm not positive if he's for sure going to list it, but he told me to share it with the group tonight. The timing was perfect. So if anybody's interested in one, like actively looking for one, talk to me afterwards and I'll get you the information.
Who's running it?
Landon Schlabel,
Okay.
B&B Breeze.
He runs a bunch of them down there, and some around here. Yeah. Okay, I will also send out your contact information and stuff on the email tomorrow. But there's a bunch of business cards on the table in the back too, so you can grab those. And you're gonna hang around for a bit for some more. I think we're supposed to be out of the room by 10, so we got almost another hour.
We have a fine car to drive, but we'll stay.
You're gonna give rides too. All right, we're gonna wrap it up. Thanks for coming out, everybody. We will see you back here the first Wednesday evening in May.